Hi, I'm George Gerbo, and welcome to Washington Times Weekly, where we get the chance to sit down with our reporters and dig into their coverage of the latest news and events. And joining me today is Washington Times general assignment and culture reporter Sean Salai. Sean, it's good to see you.
Great to see you, George.
Let's start with something that's been a hot topic for a lot of Americans, and that's Real ID. The deadline for implementation finally came on May 7th. Not as many crazy issues at airports and so forth as some people might have expected. The Department of Homeland Security is kind of doing a slower, warning process and not immediately banning people from getting on airplanes if you do not have a Real ID. But there's still some problems, as you've written about, or potential problems that could be for some Americans in dealing with fraud and potential abuse of these Real IDs, especially for older Americans.
Absolutely. The Federal Trade Commission reported an enormous surge in government imposter scams from 2023 to 2024. And the Better Business Bureau recently put out an alert that said, be on the lookout for similar scams with Real ID. And I've spoken to a number of people, including LexisNexis Risk Solutions, which works with the federal government to combat these schemes. And they say there's an incredible surge of scams out there, which come in the form of text messages, emails, and social media ads with fake websites. And essentially, they're targeting anybody who is just waking up to the Real ID phenomenon. So people who are maybe latecomers and didn't realize this has been going on for the past 20 years, that the government has been pushing people to get this stricter form of identification. They're also targeting immigrants, both legal and illegal, and also senior citizens, people with mobility issues who maybe think, oh, maybe I can get this Real ID without actually going to a DMV or in Maryland, an MVA branch. The reality is that the federal government needs you there in person. You need to have your ID in hand. That means government documents like a social security card, a birth certificate, and there's no way around it. The reason for this is that after 9/11, Congress decided to strengthen the security requirements to get identification to fly in the United States. So the Real ID is necessary to get on a plane now. It's necessary to enter federal buildings. In essence, it's something that we've known has been coming for a long time. Some states are very well prepared. Maryland recently reported that they have a 99% compliance rate. In Virginia, 59% of drivers who have driver's licenses have the Real ID, which is marked by a star in the upper right-hand corner. Other states are way behind. For some reason, New Jersey is the lowest in the nation. They only have 17% people who have learner's permits, state-issued ID cards, or driver's licenses Real ID compliant. As you mentioned, it's still possible to get on the plane. You're just going to be hassled quite a bit. So if you try to get on a plane at any time in the near future and you have an older driver's license that doesn't have a star in the corner, you're going to be subjected to a fairly unpleasant additional screening. The Better Business, not the Better Business Bureau, but the AAA, the Auto Club, is warning that we're going to be looking at delays at airports in the near future because TSA is going to need to figure out how to process and how to deal with the folks who haven't upgraded yet. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're looking at the moment.
At some point, it'll be those warnings will turn into more stronger enforcement. You can still use a passport and the passport cards to get on airplanes, but stricter mandation of the standard is definitely coming.
Yeah, and we want to be clear that you can still fly internationally with a passport. The only reason you would fly with a driver's license is domestically. So you can fly domestically with either the passport or the driver's license.
Another place that you've covered about where technology is kind of, advancing in American life in school systems, specifically K through 12 schools. And we hear discussions and read a lot about artificial intelligence and its use and implementation, not only in our industry, but, across the board. And as a nation, feels like we're still kind of grappling with it and trying to understand and decide how much AI intrusion we want, or how much we want our work to be dictated by AI. A place that's kind of being acutely found out is in schools, where teachers, as you've written about, are trying to determine, is this something we can utilize? Is it something we need to ban in classrooms? I know at the high school levels and so forth, you hear stories, and you've written about plenty stories about teachers, schools banning phones being with students during class because they're using AI for different prompts or to figure out equations or solutions or to write stories or prompts for them. And it's this battle that's playing out in schools across the nation, isn't it?
Absolutely. And one of the standard traditions in the United States is that young people tend to get fake IDs. And I have to tell you that when it comes to AI, it's not good enough to fake a real ID yet. So part of the real ID scam is that you've also got illegal immigrants, people who are underage buying black market real IDs online, and they're not really good enough. On the other hand, K-12 schools are starting to really take AI seriously for a whole number of more legitimate purposes. In late 2022, we had the emergence of ChatGPT onto the scene, generative AI program in which you pose questions to the AI and it can generate text, images, it can generate entire essays, it can answer complex math problems, pass the bar exam, and do all these incredible things based on an ever-expanding database of information. The initial response of schools was to do everything they could to stop this and keep it out of the classroom. Some teachers experimented with it, but for the most part, schools tried to upgrade their plagiarism policy. Turnitin.com, which is a leading website that teachers use to detect plagiarism in essays, produced a new website in April of 2023 that purported to be over 90% effective at catching AI writing in essays. Things have changed quite a bit. Over the past couple of years, the schools started evolving into use policies where they started to try to set rules for using AI. And now we're in a third phase where schools are actually requiring AI literacy. This has been backed up by policy at a number of levels. For example, President Trump issued an executive order recently directing the Education and Labor Departments to promote and encourage programs for high school students to take AI classes. Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat in California, passed a law back in October that requires K-12 classes to teach AI literacy. When you talk to the experts, they're going to tell you that this is something that you can't just relegate to computer science classes. In order to be really prepared for the emerging workforce, which is predominantly tech-based, a lot of employers are saying they want kids to have a certain AI literacy, an ability to kind of think critically, work with the artificial intelligence chatbot, and use it to generate higher insights, to streamline workflows. And this is something that is going to be a big thing to watch for in schools and education over the next few years.
Let's wrap up with a look at the housing market and specifically for younger Americans, folks like ourselves, where record low number of adults, especially ones coming into trying to get their first home or maybe even perhaps moving from a starter home to a more permanent place they can call home. It's been a struggle with inflation, the economy, mortgage rates, everything, and a record low number of American adults feel priced out of the market or will buy a home in the next few years, in the next 5 years. And it's a struggle that I've seen in my lifetime, going back to the days of the Great Recession, and market got better after that at a certain point. But now we're kind of falling into this place where a lot of Americans are choosing, Sean, to perhaps rent or stay in the same place that they've been without having the opportunity to purchase a new home.
Yes, this comes from the Gallup poll, and of course we see a number of indicators that young people are feeling pessimistic about their future financially. As I mentioned before, a lot of them are leaning into AI, others are leaning into trade schools and micro-credentials. People are rethinking college as a possibility that maybe I'll be better off financially if I defer college or get into a job right after high school. At the same time, these jobs are not paying enough to buy a home today. So the Gallup poll recently put out some research that showed 2/3 of adults surveyed feel priced out of home ownership. Roughly 30% of people responding to the latest Gallup poll said that they plan to buy a home in the next 5 years. That's way down from before 2022. And it's also down from the housing market boom in the early 2000s. At one point, there was an all-time high of 81% of people who said they were about to buy a house in 2003. That started sliding in 2009 when we had the housing market crash. And in 2022, home values peaked nationwide At the same time, interest rates started surging. And so the top reason people are giving for not being able to afford a house is simply that they don't have the funds. They can't make the down payment. Things are just looking very bleak for the U.S. housing market at the moment. And of course, we just heard that the Federal Reserve decided not to lower interest rates. So it might be something for the foreseeable future that we're going to have to deal with, especially with younger Americans, people who are first-time homeowners, or just, folks who are renting are just thinking home ownership is beyond them at the moment.
Excellent insight. As always, Sean, I appreciate the time. It's good to see you.
Great to be with you, George.
You can find all of Sean's coverage at WashingtonTimes.com and on social media. I'm George Gerbo. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.